Hey Riley besties, welcome back to the Writing with ANANEU podcast where we talk about all things writing. In today's episode, I'm really excited because I have a beautiful guest. I have Ashely Faye here on my podcast and I literally love her so much. So Ash, do you want to kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi. Just want to say it's an honor that I'm on this podcast because I literally adore Anna. I do have an Instagram that I do try and write some writing content, mainly just to encourage other writers. So if y'all would want to follow me, it's just at Ashley's Writing Corner, and I just make a chill space, hopefully to encourage people. That's just the goal.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Pretty much it.
No, I really love your account. It's so aesthetic, and like if you love Halloween or like you love like autumn vibes, Ashely is like the place, like her platform is the place to be. So
I just project my interests out there.
Honestly, the vibes are like there. Like literally just reminds me of Gilmore Girls and like beautiful maple leaves and like pumpkin like lattes and stuff like that. So no, her account is amazing, but I'll link it down below in the description if you're on my YouTube channel. But anyways, today in this episode we're going to be talking about our origin stories as writers and basically what got us into writing. And specifically we're going to be talking about fan fiction and how we kind of started to write fan fiction as a way of getting into the writer world, and kind of also reading out some fan fiction in today's episode, which I'm really excited for. So first off, we're just gonna get straight into it, and I just wanted to ask Ashely, what was your origin story? What got you into writing? When did you start writing? You know, what age were you? And what sort of fanfic did you get into?
Right. So, long story short, it was actually in middle school, and it was like in middle school science class, you had to do like a STEM project, and I hate science. So, fair. One of the options was that you could write a sci-fi story, and I was like, I would prefer that. I've never done it before, but I'll try it. So I wrote a sci-fi story, and pretty much that sparked everything for me. Like after I wrote that, even though looking back on it, and even after writing it then, I knew it was terrible, but I loved the joy that it brought me making it.
Right.
So it was pretty much that, yeah. That's how I got started, and I've been kind of writing ever since. So
can I just ask, like, what sort of story was the sci-fi? Like, what did it have aliens in it? Humans?
Yeah.
Like, what was the vibes?
How sci-fi? So it kind of was more time travel. And at that time in my life, I was very much obsessed with like Doctor Who and The Adventures of Merlin.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it's kind of a fanfic on accident because I was so into that world and that story.
Yeah.
So, but basically like a family goes like fishing, and then this whole big portal shows up in the water, and then they go to medieval Camelot.
That is epic.
Where they end up finding they all have magical powers of some kind.
Oh!
Yeah. So I
love that.
That was basically the summary, but like the whole portal scene, I just envisioned the Doctor Who intro with like the TARDIS bouncing around in space. Like that's what I envisioned. And then literally all the characters in it that were like medieval Camelot were exactly the same as how it's like depicted in the show. Like I basically described them as the same. So
yeah. No. That is seriously, I want to be in that science class. I wish in my like middle school science class we could write books about sci-fi stuff. Yeah, that's really interesting how like an assignment got you into writing. Yeah, that's epic. And then kind of like what kind of made you, like what was the sort of next sort of writing stuff did you get into, and how quickly like did you fall in love with writing, you know?
So after I wrote that, I pretty much knew immediately that I wanted to be a writer.
Wow. Yeah.
I just didn't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it wasn't Wattpad, but I was introduced to like this fan fiction app, and I started reading fan fiction, and I grew to love it. And then I was like, okay, well, since these worlds are already created, what if I try and do one of my own? So I basically started to learn the writing craft through writing fan fiction because I just didn't know where else to start.
Right. No, that is so valid. That is so fun. What was sort of like some of the fanfic that you like to read? Like, what sort of worlds were you in? Because you mentioned like Fruits Basket and like Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Like,
So
what
in
were some of the stories?
so beginning wise, it was Harry Potter because that was like
Yeah.
that's like my home fictional world
Yeah.
ever since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I also just in growing in life, I've been acquainted with new things. So I even tried doing an Outer Banks one. I did Fruits
Wow.
Basket. I've done. Well, I haven't done. I've started like about 15. Like I just keep starting them. I
Yeah.
never finish them.
No, that's fine.
But they do range to a different variety. I think I even started to write one for like the Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes.
Wow. Yeah.
Because
Oh,
I
that's
love that
epic.
world. And I love Grayson. So I wanted to have a bit of that in there.
No, that's for sure. It's kind of interesting because if we go back to that sci-fi story you wrote and that what got you into writing, what got me into writing was also like a science fiction story, which
You're kidding.
it was pretty crazy. But I guess if I go into my origin story and how I started to write, I think I was just more so obsessed with books, and it was like around middle school that I started to be like an avid reader. Like I got to a point where like my dad would like ban me from reading because he thought I would like be too like antisocial. So like to all the family events, I would just like have my nose stuck in the book, like on the bus, like before class, even in class. I was just obsessed with reading, and I think it got to a point where it's a little bit different, where I just got so fed up with living in this reality, and I'm just like, damn, like I hate how boring life is. So then I just like came home and wrote this like really actually I guess it's kind of a fan fiction, like now that I think about it. Not really though. It was a sci-fi story where basically the earth was dying and these characters had to go off and live on a different planet, and it was all like very rushed. So like the main character was just like shoved into a pod and like sent out with the hope that the pod will lead her to like a new planet. And I think recently I'd been watching Avatar, like the Blue People Avatar.
Yeah.
And that is what like it's I guess it's kind of a fanfic. It's a bit different, but yeah, there were definitely like these different like not blue people but like aliens on the planet, and it was a mix of that sort of like vibe of like new completely out of world experience, and that's why of course I was so fed up with reality. So when I kind of think about it, it's kind of the same as you, Ash, like inspired by a sort of world like when you talked about Camelot and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of my origin story, just being fed up with reality and then loving
It's
different
valid.
stories, and the Avatar world like Pandora, and making my own. And I think that's like why when we start to talk about fanfic, like in the discussion at the end of the episode, we're going to talk hopefully about how easy it is, and how that sort of framework of creating your new world is sometimes really daunting. So taking inspiration is so valid and probably like the best way, in my opinion, to get into writing and to practice your craft, because I think it's also so fun because you get to fangirl as you're writing, right?
Exactly.
So that's so great. So how about we get into actually reading some of our fanfics? I want you to go first, Ash.
Oh gosh.
And, listeners, if you cringe, don't worry. We're cringing along with you, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So kind of explain the fanfic a little bit, and then you can get straight into reading it.
So the main premise of this one, it is one of my Gilmore Girls one. It's the older, where basically kind of similar with Lorelai, but with this main character, Sabrina Williams. She lived in Hartford, had the same story as Lorelai, to where she would escape her family's house and would basically go to Lorelai and Rory's, basically try to live her life there. And basically it starts off with Sabrina and Rory graduating from Chilton. And then like just about like her story about trying to like gain her standing and how her parents want her to pursue maybe a certain career that would uphold the family name, but she is also minoring in something that she would actually want to pursue.
Right.
So she's trying to juggle.
So cool. Yeah.
But yeah, and then of course drama ensues. So,
of course, that's the whole plot.
yeah, of course. So, basically, like, she starts to have an attachment to Dean, and this is, at the point that I'm reading it, this is them on a date. And I'm gonna be cringing with y'all. Like, my face is turning crimson right now. Oh my gosh, this is so bad.
Don't worry, girl. Don't worry.
Okay, so it's here we go. Sabrina, you okay? Asked Dean, moving a strand of hair away from my face. I snapped out of my thoughts and looked up at him. Yeah, I'm swell. Dean began to laugh. Swell? Yes, swell. I'm doing swell, I giggled in reply. I hated my laugh. It was like a hyena on helium. My silver eyes connected with his hazel ones. I could have gotten lost in those eyes. Sabrina, I love you. In that moment, time stood still. I couldn't believe it. Dean told me he loved me. Love. Love.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I love you, replied Dean. However, I understand if you're not ready to say it back. I've been through this before, and as Dean kept talking, I realized love was the word I was trying to think of. I love you too. I loved Dean Forrester. That's the snippet.
No. That is so good. That is like so cute. Are you kidding me?
It was what really makes me cringe is just how it was like so me, because I'm someone that uses the word swell in my everyday life.
Right.
So, and I think I've had the interaction where someone was like, "Did you just say swell?" And I'm like, "Yes, I meant doing swell." And I was just like,
so
"Oh
cool.
Gosh." But yeah, that was
the
that was a little snippet.
thing. I love that. I love that swell thing as well, and like how, wow. No, that is the sweetest thing. I swear, Ash, that's really good.
Thank
that's, like,
you.
one of your first, like, wow, like that's crazy. I loved how you picked that particularly because it's just so. But I understand, the sort of cliche about the eyes. Like I could get lost in those eyes, but it's low key true. Like it's low key true, and I think like there's a reason why people describe it like that. But yeah. Awesome. Well, did you want to hear mine? Mine's kind of a similar scene. For context, this story is it's a fanfic about gem casters because I love gems so much. And yeah, it's kind of inspired by the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. And in the context, I guess, Jem has been sick. And
poor boy.
He finally like, oh my gosh, stop. He's sick, but then he kind of gets better, and then it's like me meeting him, after that sort of period where I thought he was gonna die. But it kind of starts really, like, instantly. So I guess I'm gonna read it. Okay. Let's go. Okay. Okay, give me one second. Okay. I love you, I scream, my heart shattering. He stops short. I've always loved you, Jem. I looked up at him, tears stinging in my eyes, my chest shaking. I've always loved you how you are, with or without black hair, with or without param. I don't care if you're weak or strong or healthy, because everything you are, everything you're fighting against, that is the Jem I love. That is the Jem I've always... I stop when he walks towards me. He lifts his hand slowly to cup my face again, and he brushes my lip once more. Jem, I whisper. His eyes are glistening, and a tear falls upon the white of his cheek. I love you, he murmurs, and brings his lips down to mine. My mouth turns to honey as my two hands fall into his chest as he holds me with his gentle arms. His lips are softer than I imagined, warm as it parts against mine. My heart flutters as if my heart were a cage of butterflies as my eyelashes fall against his cheek, as my mind gets lost between his lips and the smell and feel of him here with me. Tentatively, our mouths pull apart and my eyes flutter open, a breath falling out of me. My eyes travel to look at his hands resting upon... My eyes travel to look at my hands resting upon his beating chest, to the vulnerable white of his neck, and lastly, his eyes, which are fixed on me. Our warm breaths mingle, sweet with silent promise. I feel my heart shuddering at his touch with every lengthening second, feeling his arms around my waist as if he was meant for holding me. Oh, that's kind of cute.
Oh my gosh.
The time stretches so it feels like all the time in the world and none at all. My head tilts upward slowly, my hands snaking up his strong chest to intertwine at the base of his soft neck. His face tilts downward slowly, and our lips seem to travel across the world to find another again. And for only the second time in forever, our lips meet.
Oh my gosh, I'm like crying right now.
Embarrassing.
That was
really?
so sweet. Yeah. No, I loved that vulnerability that you had in sharing the feelings and just his gentle approach of just being like, I love you. Like, that's so Jen. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I now need to read the book. I'm going to drop everything tonight and read the book. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm blushing right now really bad. So I'm sorry if I can't read like with a straight like, but it was kind of wholesome, like not gonna lie. Like I think that was like my first fanfic I've ever written, and it was kind of like just as I was starting to write. But I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's on sort of vulnerability and describing like how it feels. Mm-hmm. Even though I've never like felt love before.
Yeah.
Obviously, I loved him. Let's say that.
Who doesn't? I mean, that man.
He's so good. I mean, like, I wish I could read the whole thing. Like, I low-key should in, like, a video. But, like, the context. So that's why it's, like, the I love you when I, like, scream it at the start. Like, that's, like, extremely, like, powerful because for context, he's kind of, like, saying, like, I'm not strong enough. Like, I'm always sick. You know, you need someone better. All that stuff. Like, it's all, like, it's literally, like, just me as being Tessa, the main character, and, like, Jem. And that's kind of, how it goes. But that's our fanfiction, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Very sweet. I feel like it was very sweet.
Yeah, I loved how they were both wholesome and basically about confessions of love and how we didn't intend that. Like, they were both just wholesome.
Just wholesome, cute little scenes. And I literally live for that. Like, I would read millions of like confessions. Like confessions are the best times. Ugh, that's great. That was so fun. Thank you for sharing, Ash. That was really, really great. No, yeah. So we're gonna get into, as the final part of this episode, talking about fan fiction and how that can be really helpful for beginner writers, and especially grappling with the question of, is fan fiction quote unquote real writing? So I'm really excited to hear what you think about that, Ash, and what you think about how fanfic can help writers become better writers.
Yeah. I know, especially from my own experience, I loved writing, but I didn't know of anyone that was a writer, so I had no one to turn to. And my first thing was being introduced to fan fiction and how that world, it's already created, and writing can be intimidating. I know that was like the big thing for me. So when I learned about fan fiction, I saw that as an opportunity to get acquainted with everything, but I wouldn't have to stress over the world building, creating a plot, really. I just had to focus on, like mostly you would just have to focus on creating your main character, and then you could gain inspiration from whatever media that you were feeding in. And I really think the main argument with, is fan fiction real writing, is the fact that, like, you can't really quote unquote publish it because it's technically someone else's work. I think that's the main argument, because it is, it's still valid and it still is writing. It's just something where, like, you can't really publish it and be an author in that sense because it's someone else's work. But that's why we have the Wattpad or those other fan sites where we can still quote unquote publish them, but we're not in danger of being, like, quote unquote sued or something like that. Like, it's just a fun world, and that community is so welcoming to where everyone is so welcome. But
and I totally agree with that. Like, the stress of being a writer and creating your own world, and I think also the fact that those stories have context, so you can literally pick your most favorite part of that world or favorite character, so it's something that you're automatically passionate about. And I think you sort of, it's definitely very intimidating writing and creating a new world without, because when you think about it, although you do know the context, I guess, in your head, having to write that and get people to, read it, you're kind of starting from zero when, fan fiction gives you a place and a time to kind of just have fun with writing. And I think that's honestly such a wholesome and great way to get into the craft because, there's a sense of community there. You can really just write what you want and get immediate feedback and get readers actually reading your work. So it's a very fun process, I feel. And you kind of said, Ash, just quickly that you have you did publish a short story, the one that I was so excited for.
Yeah.
And also another story that you had on Wattpad.
So the one that I actually had your help with in editing was called Delicate Strength.
Yes.
And then there's the other one that I wrote called Library of Stardust.
That's right,
That one I actually want to grow into a novel because I just grew so in love with it. So, but
See, that's epic. I think with that also, creating new stories as you kind of move away from fanfic, it's kind of like a short sort of fiction until you get that sort of love for that story. And just like in your case, you're creating a novel now. I did not know that. You didn't tell me that. That's so exciting.
I totally thought I did. I don't even know.
I don't think you did, but that is so exciting. So definitely go check out. What's your handle on Wattpad so the listeners can?
So my handle on that is Ashely Faye, but it's with 4 Y's. So it's Ashely 4 Y's Faye.
I see.
Yeah. So
cool.
It's
I'll link that in the description as well if you're on my channel and listening in. But I think, did you have any more closing thoughts before we finish this episode just about fanfic and encouraging young writers, beginner writers, and for people in that sort of fan fiction world?
Ultimately, something that I really battled with when I was getting into writing and how, I mainly was just writing fan fiction at that point because I didn't know how to write real stories, but I was almost embarrassed to say that I wrote a story and they would find out it was fan fiction. So I eventually grew to recognizing there's no shame in writing fan fiction. It's a passion, and the fact that you decided to write a story further delving into that world in that story that you love just shows your passion for it, and you shouldn't feel ashamed for showing your passion. That was something that I unfortunately learned later on in life. I should have learned that sooner. But just if anyone is struggling with that, just don't feel shame for writing, especially if it's fan fiction, because you're expressing your passion and your love. And fan fiction's cool. Everyone loves fan fiction. Most books that are published now are actually quote unquote fan fictions of something.
They are. They literally are. When I think of Cassandra Clare, Clary and Jace, kind of inspired from Harry Potter, right?
I think so.
I honestly, the way you were saying, it's also, I don't know, it's almost fun, in a way, finding those sort of gaps in stories and expanding that. Because my cousin, I went over to my auntie's house and he was showing me his assignment for his English, assignment, and he had to pick a sort of in between point in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and he had to create I think it was something with Mr. Thomas, and he had to come up with something a whole sort of little arc between the story that could have plausibly happened. And I think finding those little pockets in stories just brings out the sort of passion you have, and it just shows how much you love the story and think about the characters and what can happen in the sort of subtext. So I think that's so great. But thank you so much, Ash, for being on my podcast. I literally love you so much. And I love talking about writing in general, and the fact that we talked about fan fiction, I haven't really talked too much about that in any of my videos really, or on my podcast especially. So that was really fun. But definitely go check out Ash on Instagram, and check out her Wattpad stories as well. They're amazing, especially Delicate Strength. That is an amazing short little story. I love it so much. But
stop, you're making me blush.
No, stop. You're seriously too sweet. But check out Ashely. Help her grow. I think you're nearly up to a milestone, right, on Instagram?
I am. It keeps like fluctuating. It's like I think I'm at like 988. So I wasn't 990, but now I'm like fluctuating. So I'm almost at 1,000. Almost.
Get her to 1K on Instagram, guys. Please go ahead, help a writer out. But yeah, I hope to see you guys in my next writing next writing podcast episode. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye.